Cabinet. Do you want to take us through the sentiment and any apologies?
Yep, thanks, Chair. Just before I call the sedient members, a reminder that this morning's proceedings will be recorded and will be uploaded onto the Council's website for repeated viewing. Councillor Reid?
Yeah.
Councillor McMahon?
Apologies.
Councillor McFadden? Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Mackay?
Present.
Councillor Linton?
Here.
Councillor Barton?
Here.
An apology this morning from Councillor Douglas. Councillor Ingram?
Here.
Councillor Maitland?
Here.
Councillor Filson?
Here.
Dr David Lewis?
Here.
Claire McKellar?
Here.
With an apology from Babs Mowat, Norman Watt,
Here.
and Jackie Livingston.
I am here.
And I'll
I'm
call again for Councillor McFadden.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, welcome everybody to this morning's Cabinet. Okay, the first item was declarations of interest. I don't think there's anything particular I can see. If you have anything you want to declare it now. Okay, that being the case, just move on to item 2, and that's the East Ayrshire Performance Summary Report. And Joe, if you want to kick it off.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This is the Q1 East Ayrshire Performance Report. It builds on the themes and messages that I gave in June this year. And at that time, I spoke of services that were experiencing increasing demand and increasing costs. And I also noted that these challenges were likely to continue into this financial year. And indeed, the report before you continues that theme. Paragraph 8 sets out our current projection for services and highlights that services are likely to overspend by around £9 million. £4 million of that overspend relates to services provided by health and social care. And members, you know that this service received substantial COVID funding in previous years to help deal with the challenges of COVID and to support, for example, the private care home providers. Access to that Scottish Government COVID funding ceased at 1st of April. And while the impact of COVID on the services is lessening to some extent, other long-standing challenges, particularly those around social care costs arising from and supporting an ageing population, are again coming to the fore. And as you are already aware, the integration scheme that governs the Integration Joint Board notes that a financial plan should be put in place to help recover the overspend. That plan is currently being compiled by the leadership team within the IJB, when details will be brought forward to the board in due course. In the meantime, health and social care colleagues will be utilising available funding, including retained balances, as well as taking steps to redesign and reshape services, all of which will reduce the level of overspend. And I expect that overspend will reduce as we go through the remainder of the year. At this point in time, also, we're seeing a £4 million overspend projected for our education service, with the service experiencing pressures in early years and special education, with early years expected to end the year around £1.6 million over budget, having carried forward a budget pressure of around £1 million last year. Again, it's important to highlight that colleagues in early years recently began working with colleagues in the improvement service to review current service provision and establish options to deliver the service within the financial envelope. Moreover, colleagues are also examining the demand for early years and are seeking to review and better understand that demand and work in this regard. And that work will also inform that wider piece that's been undertaken by the improvement service. Remaining with education, we note an anticipated overspend of around £2 million in additional support for learning, or ASN, with around £1.6 million of that £2 million being attributed to additional transport costs. Members, you are aware that a review of the special education service has been undertaken by the Chief Education Officer, with details of this review coming back to you in the coming months. And within communities and economy, services are reporting an anticipated overspend of around £1.3 million, with facilities and property management highlighting an overspend of around £600,000, mainly due to the timing of capital fee income as our capital programme slips. They are also experiencing significant pressures with food costs similar to homes throughout East Ayrshire. Within housing and communities, an overspend of around £600,000, predominantly due to our waste costs. And again, you know, members, that in addition to the reviews that have been undertaken in early years and in ASN, that there's also a review being undertaken by the Head of Housing and Communities in regards to the waste service, with that review brought back to members later this calendar year. In Ayrshire Roads Alliance, reporting an overspend of around £200,000 that masks a range of issues. It's important to note that this overspend of around £200,000 is after the service sustaining primary and secondary school transport costs of around £500,000. And in order to bring that service back online, then the service is reviewing expenditure on roads infrastructure and on discretionary spend. Members, against the overspend that's been reported this period, you know, it's important to note that these reviews are being undertaken. They're being undertaken at pace and with challenge and with review to redesign our services where appropriate and to reduce that overspend primarily due to increased demand and additional costs. Those reviews will come back to you in due course, and please be assured that in the meantime, colleagues and I are supporting services with these reviews. Members, moving on from service-based budgets, we move on to paragraph 15. It notes the continued and sustained pressure being experienced by our Scottish Welfare Fund. You know, members, that you already approved a transfer of £250,000 to add to our annual £1 million budget for Scottish Welfare Fund in June this year. And the paper before you today asks for you to approve an additional £400,000 transfer from the Finance and ICT in-year underspend to help sustain that Scottish Welfare Fund budget. It will essentially, members, allow us to keep the eligibility for crisis grants at low and the eligibility for community care grants at medium. But I have to be upfront with you, members, and saying we are seeing incredible pressure on this budget and incredible number of applications coming in each day. And I have to advise that even with the £250,000 already applied and with the £400,000 which I'm asking you to approve today, it is unlikely that even with that we'll be unable to maintain the eligibility at low throughout all of this financial year, and I'll keep you updated at subsequent reports. Paragraph 16 provides some details of council tax reduction or council tax benefit that's provided to 14,000 of our households across East Ayrshire. The annual budget for CTR is around £9.5 million. You know, last year, member, that we spent around £10 million on that. And very early indications show that for this year, we won't spend £500,000 more than budget. We are likely to spend possibly £1 million more than budget on CTR. It's giving an indication, members, in terms of CTR and in terms of Scottish Welfare Fund, that while the council is facing financial challenges, those same challenges have been felt in households across the length and breadth of East Ayrshire. Please be assured that in terms of CTR, I'll be lobbying through Directors of Finance and through COSLA, in addition to the comments I made last week at Council, for that quantum, that budget of CTR nationally to be increased, recognising the substantial and increased demand that are taking place throughout the length and breadth of Scotland. Members, I'm very conscious that in the covering report that we expand that further in the accompanying report, and colleagues are here to support that as we go through that. And in the meantime, I'm happy, Chair, to stop there and take any questions on the revenue section.
Thanks, Sean. Maybe just before, I would agree. I think we need to see, you know, and understand some of these service reviews. You know, there will be consequences of COVID. There will be others, and we really need to get, you know, understand so we can get everything back online. You know, particularly as you mentioned early years, but there's right across the board. You know, there could be hidden consequences of some of the COVID brings and other things that we really need to really need to understand and get a plan how to deal with them. Ian.
Thanks, Dougie, and through you to a question for Joe. On paragraph 8, Joe, I'm pleased to see that work has already begun on bringing this year's budget back in line, but I think that work has to be really given the utmost priority. I think we need to have back to Cabinet at the earliest opportunity a full report on how we're going to achieve our year-end target of sticking to the budget that was agreed. Obviously, you need to get working on next year's budget at the earliest opportunity, and we can't have this running on, for months and months. It needs to be addressed really urgently.
Thanks, Ian. I think we would agree with that, Joe.
And through you, Chair, absolutely. And, you touched on the point that we CMT colleagues and I are progressing early steps on the 2024-25 revenue budget. And at the same time, we are also doing the reviews and supporting those reviews that are taking place in terms of this year's budget. It is imperative that those reviews come back in early course, given that they will probably inform decisions for officers and indeed for council as we approach the 2024 revenue budget. And so in that regard, I'll take that back, Councillor Linton, and I'll also make sure that the colleagues within my own service that are supporting these reviews are also aware that there's a need to bring them back in early course for consideration.
Councillor Mackay-Maureen.
Thanks very much. It's to ask a very specific question in relation to ARA, please. And it is in relation to timescale for what was proposed in relation to London Road and is it Braeside Street car park, to ask for an update on that. And equally, Joe, I'm not quite sure how you're going to do this because you've touched on revenue and capital as well. So there obviously would be my ongoing standard question in relation to Northwest Kilmarnock schools and to express my extreme concern that we were anticipating an update on that December 22, and here we are at September 23 and we're no further forward. And also within the text and commentary is to note that the Dunlop Nursery School has been delayed because of water damage to some of the timbers. Now, that sounds to me like that's a contractor responsibility. It's obviously going to have an impact on us in terms of a delayed opening potential for that new facility. What claims are we making against the contractor in relation to that? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maureen. Maybe bring Kevin in first about the parking issue at Centre Stage.
Through you, Chair, we took the information that we had and I had a full review of it and decided that there was insufficient information had been passed out originally in the tendering exercise. So it was reissued to out for procurement. So there's the prices are due back. We are due back on the 28th of August. And we then have 4 weeks to evaluate the contract. And I would be hoping that we'd be starting the works in October 23.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. And Simon, in terms of Dunlop School.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. Yes, as the report notes, there was some issues of water damage to timber and insulation, which is completely the contractor's responsibility. These were picked up on site. We've asked them to open up areas and subsequently replace some of that insulation and timber. That's now been done. They're hoping that they can absorb the time that's incurred by that within the programme. It looks like it's going to be an early 24 completion for that project. That's due to a number of reasons, including material supply issues, but in terms of responsibility, it is all the contractor's responsibility, so there's no cost associated with that for the council. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Simon. And in terms of North West School, I think in terms of the LEAP programme, Andrew, I mean, we've been discussing with colleagues at COSLA. There's quite a bit of concern about this, and we're trying to put a bit of pressure on the government just to have a bit of clarity about that. But Andrew, do you want to comment?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the submission went in about this time last year. We were anticipating a response by December. We've had 3 updates via the government in terms of anticipated confirmation of when it would be agreed, and none of them have been kind of confirmed. So at this stage, we are still waiting. I think clearly from our own point of view, we did a few months ago look at the options about whether we're successful or unsuccessful. We needed to consider what our options were, and would anticipate as part of the wider capital review we would be coming back to Cabinet, sort of kind of obviously before the end of the financial year in terms of future proposals. So I think, but again, yeah, keen that we would hear something back, and as you've said, through the heads of property group, as well as through COSLA, there's been continual contact made with the government to try and kind of get a response, but unfortunately nothing yet.
We'll continue to put as much pressure as we can on the government, because we don't want any further delays. I can understand issues recently, and I think we'll come to that maybe later on, just some of the structural problems some other schools are facing, and we certainly wouldn't want that to interfere with the LEAP programme at all. Maureen.
No, thank you very much, and thank you to officers for those answers. So from Kevin, first of all, obviously we are on schedule then to go ahead with the works, because I think October had been the initially agreed date, so that's good. Simon, in terms of Dunlop, accepting that that's the contractor's responsibility, in your answer you imply to me that January or February 24 as an opening date was always the anticipated time scale, so therefore there would be no compensation for us for delay. And again, Leader, you've said exactly what my understanding is in relation to Northwest Schools, and clearly, as we see basically every month, material supplies are increasing. Clearly it's in our interests to ensure that what we get is the very best deal for us as a council, is that we get an early resolution, and thank you for any pressures that yourself and officers are applying in relation to that. It's really important. Thank you.
No, absolutely. We'll continue to put some pressure. In terms of some of the issues, maybe at this stage, we would have a discussion, Graham, about the call it aerated concrete hack, is it you call it? Rack?
Yep, happy to talk about that. The issue of rack, reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete. We all know it's hit the headlines recently due to some schools in England not returning after the school holidays. That's due to the structural fears of the integrity of these rack panels. These panels were used generally between the 1950s and 80s. Were mainly used in the flat roof construction. The panels had a life expectancy of around 30 years and could become weak over time. I'd like to thank Andrew Kennedy and Angela Graham for carrying out an evaluation to identify properties which could potentially contain rack panels in our properties. After site visits, 3 properties have been identified to contain rack panels. They were found at the Grassyards Cemetery, Brothy, a separate plant room at Crosshouse Nursery, the community centre site, and a separate plant room at the Hurlford Community Centre. All 3 have been classed as no immediate concern by structural engineers, Although I do think it's imperative that we keep updating all affected parties on a regular basis, especially the Hurlford Community Association, where one of their buildings are affected. But Leader, it's reassuring that none of our school buildings are affected by rack panels. East Ayrshire Council have invested heavily in upgrading our school estate, and many of the older 1950s and 80s buildings types have been demolished and replaced. Since 2012, the SNP administration have spent over 300 million upgrading our education estate with 26 new, refurbished or extended schools. I'm not going to go through the whole exhaustive list of these schools, but some of the new build programmes so far: Nether Third Primary School, the Barony Campus, the William McAvaney Campus, Muircut Primary School, Watriggs Primary School, St Xavier's, Willowbank School, Patna Primary School, and Gargaston. And many more of our schools have been refurbished or extended, with Cross House Primary a very recent example. So I was glad to hear that our school estate are not affected. I just wanted to see, Andrew, had any further comment on where we are with the rack panels?
Thanks, Chair. I think there's probably kind of two main issues from a national point of view. Clearly, the Department of Education have taken a decision which has been heavily covered in the press over the last kind of week or so. Rack panels have been something that we've been aware of, and obviously from a professional industry point of view have been about for clearly a number of years, and the kind of weaknesses in their design and their construction have been known for a number of years, and obviously a range of monitoring and inspection arrangements have been in place across the industry and also within our own estate. So the response that has been seen in the last kind of week or so, and the information that we provided is not something we've just collected in the last week. It's something we've been aware of and understand what our buildings are made of, and any kind of particular risks we would monitor. That includes previous surveys from 5 years ago, etc., when we had other issues with schools that we were able to address. So clearly, I think we're in a fairly good position around the rack panels, and obviously I've not identified anything in any of our schools. And as Councillor Barton has said, mainly because of the level of investment that we've been able to put across our estate over the last couple of decades. Clearly, there's going to continue to be a lot of interest. We've had a number of FOIs and press inquiries recently, so we're looking to kind of obviously prepare communications to go out just to kind of reassure people in terms of East Ayrshire's approach. I'm also involved in some of the national groups as well, and involved with the government in terms of more wider discussions as well. So happy to take any further questions.
It's really quite reassuring to hear that in terms of around stock and the action that we're taking. Just wondering, some of the asset transfer stock, are we aware of anything there? If we can give, if there are issues, can we give assistance in any kind of way in terms of advice and assistance?
So although the focus and some of the inquiries have been around about schools, we've got over 600 buildings of some sort, whether that's sort of storerooms through to obviously our big campuses. That includes all of our lease buildings, including CAT transfer buildings. They've all been checked and assessed for the potential that RAC is in them. And as I said, the three that Councillor Barton has named are the only ones that we've identified that have got anything. So I'd give assurance across the leased estate as well as our own operational estate.
Thanks, Andrew. Maureen?
Again, thank you very much for that, Andrew. And, I know the work that has been ongoing for several years. Members, I'm sure, will remember that a considerable section of Onthank Primary School was removed because of concerns with some of the ceiling concrete joists that we had. And I know at that particular time that was instigated a check on all buildings of similar construction across East Ayrshire, similar construction and time of construction as on Thank Primary. So I have to say I was reassured that our people had always been on top of this as an issue, and the very helpful briefing that came out indicating the 3 units that Councillor Barton has already spoken about has been very helpful, and again confirms the ongoing work that has been done within East Ayrshire.
Thanks for that, Maureen. Yeah, I think the lessons on Thank were quite a time for us, and it was a big learning curve there. Linda.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Very briefly, colleagues, we've also had briefings out to head teachers across the education sector. We're really quite aware that from a parental perspective and a pupil's perspective, there'll be quite a lot of concern in this space. So alongside the briefing issued to members yesterday, that's also been issued to the school and ECC teams out there as well in case of any other parental inquiries.
Thanks for that, Linda. Okay, Joe, do you want to continue?
Thank you. And on the revenue section, page 12, these show the individual financial projections for all of our services through to March next year. As I've touched on, they highlight the challenges being faced by services and the work that's been undertaken to support the budget and bring it back online wherever possible. Members, I covered the main points I wanted to make earlier, but would perhaps note that the housing revenue account, which I haven't touched on, is expected to end year around £500,000 under budget. That's due to additional rental income of around 300,000 and a saving at this point in time on timing of recruitment of staff to posts in housing asset services. And also maybe just highlight that in page 12 that governance is due to end the year around £500,000 underspent, principally due to the over-recovery of building warrant and planning fee income, along with some additional savings in respect of vacancies in advance of the service review. And that the Chief Governance Officer will seek to provide and reallocate the service underspend that he has at the year end to support those services that may have an overspend at year end. And that's, you know, it's particularly welcome. It shows the kind of collegiate approach we take in East Ayrshire, and it demonstrates that collective approach that we have in managing our finances. If I can, members, I'll just carry on to alternative delivery models. And the following pages show details of Ayrshire Roads Alliance as well as East Ayrshire Leisure Trust. The consolidated revenue position in terms of Ayrshire Roads Alliance shows an underspend of around £300,000 in that central strategic delivery part, with around a 400,000 underspend due to vacant posts, and again highlighting some of the challenges that, you know, some services are facing in recruiting to key technical and specialist posts. £86,000 of an underspend in terms of the local delivery for East Ayrshire Council, again due to vacant posts and the reduction in the maintenance programme and a shortfall of park income of around £493,000. And in the local delivery for South, we're seeing a projected overspend of around £200,000 due to additional costs in relation to parking fee income and parking fee income infrastructure too. Moving on to the roads capital works, the table at page 18 provides details of the expenditure to date and notes the work's been undertaken to work up design on our bridges, and we have a significant element of our capital programme set aside for that. The report highlights on page 19 the new Cumnock flood prevention scheme, noting that the final project costs are estimated at around £9 million, with around £6.5 million of that already received as part of the grant from government. The report also makes mentions of a potential for further costs to be sought by the contractor for this scheme. And the head of Ayrshire Roads Alliance, supported by the Chief Governance Officer, are progressing these matters. But it is likely that this will result in a claim being brought against the council by the contractor at some future date. And if that is the case, members, then please be assured that will be brought forward either in a separate report or through East Ayrshire Performs. And finally, members, just touching on East Ayrshire Leisure Trust, you know that in terms of the trust itself, it's it's managed to weather the storm of COVID restrictions of the past 2 years. And it's reassuring to note that at this point in time, and unlike trusts in other parts of Scotland, it's sitting with a break-even position, and with the management team there looking to improve that further as they go through the years, albeit recognising that some of the challenges they face in some aspects of that part of the business. Members, if I can, I'll just move on to the financial resilience indicators, which are appropriate and very apt at this time. You know that...
Maybe a couple of questions in the alternative delivery model. I had one in terms of just an update, if we can, on the bus station and the Grange Street parking. If we're close to a date of completion in both. Kevin?
Through you, Chair. The bus station is due to be complete in November of this year, and in terms of Grange Street car park, colleagues in F and PM are doing some work for ARA at this moment in time before we can actually start any construction works there.
So is there an estimate when that will be, what length of time the construction period? I see there's some work preliminary work going on just now, actually.
Yeah, I have to come back to you on that. There's some rubble that's been uplifted, and there's some survey work of a screen wall or a retaining wall. So I need to come back to you with a specific date.
No, that's fine. Just that's helpful. Okay, members, anything else? Okay, sorry, Joe. Just
thank you, Chair. Members, moving on to the financial resilience indicators, and you know that as part of the medium-term financial strategy, you gave approval for a suite of resilience indicators to be devised and reported to you at specific intervals, in order that you could have essentially a financial health check of the council reported on one page. It's shown at page 22, although the indicators themselves may seem complex, they do provide that health check that's so important, particularly when set against the pressures that the public sector and local government face. It shows that while our usable reserves have fallen slightly, that's because services have drawn down their balances and have used them, which is part of our reserve strategy. It also shows that the general fund uncommitted balance has increased to just under £11 million, which again is helpful and will help sustain us against unplanned works. In terms of our need to borrow and our requirement to fund our capital programme, we have a capital financing requirement of around £600 million. And members, you are also aware that in February, as part of the budget, you introduced a new affordability indicator that sits alongside our treasury strategy and our asset strategy, with this indicator limiting the ratio of our financing costs to our net revenue stream at 8%. The indicator at this point in time is just around 6.5%. And we know that this will rise as we begin to incur the £249 million of capital investment that you approved in February. The final two indicators are the education ratio and the social care ratio. They seek to capture the level of the council's total budget that is utilised by or consumed by education and social care. And you can see that for 2022-23, these ratios have increased further, caused in part by the ring fencing by government and also by the protections that you afford these services as part of the annual budget setting process. Members, we'll update and add further indicators to those highlighted in order to ensure that you have the necessary and current information available to you. However, I'm pleased with the results shown and can see that these resilience indicators being a useful tool, both for members and for Cabinet and also for officers alike. I'm happy to stop there and take any questions that may come.
Thanks, Joe. Any questions there? No? Carry on.
Thank you. Moving on to Treasury, it begins on page 24.
On you go, Maureen.
Sorry, I just didn't get the hand up quickly enough. So, Joe, it's interesting that you make that differentiation between ring fencing from government and protections given to us within the budget. For education ratio and social care ratio, is it potentially possible for you to give us a breakdown of a further ratio, what is ring fencing and what is protection within the budget at all.
Through you, Chair, the second part is fairly easy. So, for example, we protect the entire budget for teacher numbers, the teacher salaries, and for classroom assistants. We protect housing benefits and our annual charge for our PPP and NPD schools. So that part's fairly simple, and I can provide that list. The first part will be a challenge, I think. But with your approval, I'll go away and see what I can work up through the information I have in something that may be available nationally, but it may not be complete, but I'll certainly have a try.
That's sure, I appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, morning. Carry on, Joe.
Thank you. And moving on to Treasury, begins on page 24. As always, it shows our debt portfolio of around £431 million, majority of this held with the Public Works Loan Board. And it shows investments of around £24 million held on call to support our cash flow, essentially helping to support our working capital. But what I would say at this point is that two Treasury reports have been compiled, one on the outcome of the 22-23 year and a mid-year 23-24 report, which will be presented to Governance and Scrutiny Committee, and then onward to Council in the coming months, coming weeks. Members, if I can just carry on and just go on to business briefings, they start on page 51. They show a range of, sorry, beg your pardon, I'll stop there, Chair, for colleagues to come in on capital.
Thanks, Joe. Just some folk thought they were getting off easy there. Capital, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So the capital programme is continuing to make steady progress. However, as it's noted in the covering report, it is facing significant challenges due to the current economic climate. Construction inflation volatilities making it extremely difficult to accurately predict potential values of future tender returns, and recent market intelligence indicates much higher construction costs than had been anticipated. The asset investment team within Facilities and Property Management are using their professional expertise to ensure that every opportunity is taken to deliver projects as economically as possible in areas including design, specification and procurement approach. As usual, without going through the report in great detail, if I could provide you an update on a selection of projects in relation to their stage of development. So projects recently completed include the early years facilities at Catrin and O'Mellington, along with SHIP programme developments at Witch Road and Bellevue Gardens in Kilmarnock. There's approximately £27 million of construction contracts currently on site, including the new build Dunlop Early Childhood Centre, which is well advanced, the final phases of works at Kilmarnock Bus Station, and the SHIP programme developments at Kennedy Drive in Kilmarnock and Kilmarnock Road, Mauchline. Projects at detailed design stage include the Galston office project, where minor changes to the planning consent are being processed to allow an award of contract. The St Sophia's Enerfit refurbishment, where tender documents have been received and are currently being assessed. And the Doon Valley Community Campus, where tender documents are being prepared. However, as noted, cost estimates continue to indicate significant financial pressures on the project, again due to the current market conditions. Projects at the earlier stages of development include the Ayrshire Innovation Park as part of the Ayrshire Growth Deal, with feasibility layouts being developed for combining the Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor and Ayrshire Engineering Park projects at Moorfield. And we also have the Cultural Kilmarnock project, where design development has recommenced and discussions are ongoing with the main project funders to align funding timescales. Thanks, Chair. Happy to answer any questions on these projects or indeed any others within the report.
Thanks, Simon. Colleagues, any questions? Stuart?
Thanks, Chair. Just to make a comment basically about the Doon campus. I've been in touch with Andrew and Simon. There seems to be a fair bit of gap in between the information, and obviously it's because of significant pressures that's under the project team just now to try and deliver this school. But I think what happened when at Bellsbank, we learned a lesson there, and that was to have a round table with everybody around the table at the one time to share that information. And that's what I'm discussing with Andrew and Simon to try and get that done on a more regular basis, just to keep everybody informed. Okay, thanks.
No, I think that's a wise idea. Simon, yeah?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Absolutely, that's something that we want to plan for. At the moment, we're just trying to get a final position on where we are with the project financially, and there are discussions that are ongoing with Scottish Government and other funders to the project, NHS, Ayrshire and Police Scotland, to establish the final position there. And then, yes, absolutely, a round table meeting would be beneficial.
That's fine. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Simon. And just another wee one. The core project at Cumnock, reading that there, is there going to things going now that maybe move this instead of going to Cumnock, it's going to come to Kilmarnock?
No, that I'm particularly. David?
Through you, Chair, no, it's not moving to Kilmarnock.
Just the way I'm reading that there. Yeah.
No, that might be potential, but no, the proposals are there will be a report coming before Cabinet in the near future, probably in October. I think the 4th October, just setting out the current position. Obviously, members will be aware there was a delay because of the financial costs of building that building. It's about over budget, so we've had to go back to kind of first principles to look at matters, and we're working with University of West of Scotland and Ayrshire College, as well as University of Strathclyde in matters.
Thanks, David.
No, that's I'm certainly not aware of that. Okay. Okay. Maureen, sorry, Maureen's got a hand up. Maureen.
Thanks ever so much. David, just an add-on in relation to CORE. I know that we now have a manager of that project in place. I'm hoping that the expertise that the manager brings will give us further assistance in terms of looking at a design and framework for that CORE project. If you could just confirm that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, the project, the lead for that project had left to go to another authority, and we recruited and we brought a member into who actually worked for the Energy Agency. So that's a positive step forward, and we're working away behind the scenes to move that project on, and just to it's never stopped while that service lead was vacant, so it's picked up by others. But we're just trying to get all our matters lined up so that we can bring a report back, just to bring an update to members in October.
Thanks, David. That would be helpful. Update report. Yeah. Anyone else, colleagues? No. Who's next? Amanda.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, members. The people pages within the summary report start on page 30, with the statistics for absence being in page 31 and showing an increase over the year of 0.07 workdays lost per employee compared to the same period last year. As previously requested, the figures have now been included to show the comparisons by service groups. The short-term and long-term absence categories have risen in 2 out of the 3 of each category, and the early interventions and occupational health have risen again in this period. Members are aware that the support and attendance report went to Cabinet on the 23rd of August, and we're working in the background to implement the recommendations, noting that the HR focused support is in the final stages to be ready to be advertised, and that we have got a date for this month, later this month, for the health and safety stress standard to be scrutinised by the CMT. The disciplinary activity on page 32 showed 2 other outcomes and so updates in these are 1 employee resigned before their disciplinary hearing and 1 employee was issued a letter of concern. Note that there was no grievances in this period. And on page 34, members will see the breakdown of jobs and training fund, which was previously requested, which details the number and the type of trainees across the council services, noting that there was 100 trainees in the first financial year of the programme, with a further 39 employed in local businesses. The recruitment update on page 34, I would just note the hard to fill vacancies still continues within the social work, social care sector, particularly social workers, community care officers. Within other sectors, hard to fill posts include posts within ARA, technical officers, engineers posts and electricians, street lighting and technicians, housing and communities, a number of posts within the refuse side and occupational therapists, and education within school clerical and within the Chief Executive's Office, planning officers and auditors. The vacancies are considered by the Workforce Review Group and this is currently under review and the findings will be included in a future report. Payroll activity is detailed on page 35 and I would just note the car leasing is currently sitting at 380 compared to 201 for the same period last year. Page 36 contains the communication key points, including a significant work that's been undertaken with the website and the continued media and press releases. Our OD key points are also included in page 36 and happy to pause and take any questions.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions, Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. With the recruitment, Amanda, observations about the length of time it's taken to recruit jobs at the moment. There seems to be a common theme. I'm just wondering if there's something different we could be doing to accelerate the programme, or if you've got any comments on the national picture, how difficult it is to get people into certain posts.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, nationally, starting with the last bit first, there is difficulty across the board in a number of sectors, and the number of applications coming forward are very low for some posts in particular, and sometimes no posts. So we are continually looking at different ways to advertise to try and capture that market, and we are looking nationally with our colleagues. With regards to the delay in posts coming to fruition, that can be a number of things. Quite often it's down to the references and not getting the references for the successful applicant, and them having to be chased a number of times. So part of our People and Culture Digitalisation programme, we're looking at a number of different elements of the My Job Scotland and how that talks through one system to the other. And within that, there's a new reference module that we're currently looking at with a view to bringing in and piloting, where that puts the responsibility on the individual applicant to chase the references, and hopefully that, because it's a bit more meaningful to them, that will help speed that up. But we're continuing to look at different ways. Disclosure Scotland is also a cause sometimes for a bit of delay, but they're doing their national review as well, so hopefully they're streamlining all the processes and the efficiencies, so hopefully that will also help. But we are continually looking at ways to improve.
Okay. David, Health and Safety.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. If I could just start by drawing members' attention to the top of page 38, and we noted that the number of non-reportable incidents to Health and Safety section has increased by 215 compared to the same piece last year, and we've also seen a very modest increase of 2 for incidents reportable to HSE. The main reason for this increase in non-reportable incidents is due to violence and aggression reporting, both in non-educational and educational establishments. And as previously reported, Chair, that's mainly driven by direct support of young people and service users with dysregulated behaviours. It's those person-to-person contacts that can't be avoided. However, just to add some additional context to that, Chair, the Health and Safety team, since pressures in my team have reduced as COVID has reduced, we've been working more directly with teams, mainly around violence and aggression reporting, and also about accident investigation. And I think that that's also having an impact in these numbers, Chair, although in a positive sense. We also had our meeting of the Chief Executive's Health and Safety Strategy Group last week. And violence and aggression, as you can imagine, is a standing item in that meeting with our trade union colleagues. Paragraphs 24 to 26 of the Curran report outlines the various positive health, safety and well-being indicators. And just picking up a couple of things as usual, Chair. Suicide prevention work is still ongoing. Now trained over 500 people in suicide first aid. And since we started here to listen back in December 2018, those first aiders that we've trained have intervened in 202 occasions. This work has never been more important, Chair, to build resilience and awareness within our workforces and within our communities. Members will likely have seen the figures released by national statistics just this week that showed that 762 people took their lives by suicide last year, which is an increase in the year before. And in most deprived areas, people are 2.6 times more likely to die by suicide than those in the least deprived areas. So we will continue, Chair, to have that as a very clear focus for ourselves moving forward. Just to finish on a positive note, in the Community Defibrillator Initiative, that's also progressing well to date. Contractors have donated approximately £82,000 worth of equipment, and so far we've given out 37 defibrillators and cabinets to community groups across East Ayrshire, and we've got further 10 scheduled to go out within the coming weeks. That concludes my report, Chair, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, David, for the report. You know, the violence at work and violence in the schools continue to be a concern, and I've heard, you know, one incident last week that was quite concerned down at Robert Burns Academy. And, you know, I think we need to work with the campus co-op just to make sure much reassurance is given to the parents as much as possible. I don't know if you want to comment on just Robert Burns Academy and just if there's been any kind of further action taking place, Linda?
Yeah, through you, Chair, that was an isolated incident that we actually issued an elected members briefing on, so the actual information on that has been issued already to members.
Okay, Claire.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report, David. Just wanted to say that I myself have done the suicide awareness training, and it was a few years ago, and I actually feel I could do with perhaps even doing it again, and then I have used it myself on 2 occasions, and I would like to encourage all other elected members to do so too. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. I think we'll take that on board there, David.
Through you, Chair. The further courses, we run a course once every month. I think the courses up to December are full, but I think there's spaces available in December. And as Councillor Maitland has said, I would encourage anybody who's not already done the training to do so.
Thanks, Leader. The Scottish Fire and Rescue Service changed the way they respond to automatic fire alarms on the 1st of July. I'd just like to highlight the amount of work that David and his team have done to make sure we were compliant for this change of policy for the SFRS. So just a big thanks to David and his team for that work, and I appreciate you coming along yesterday to talk to members and highlight the kind of change in procedures. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Graham. Anyone else? Okay, that's health and safety business briefings.
Thank you, Chair. Now it is time, members, to talk about business briefings on page 41. They contain, as always, a range of indicators that services wish to bring to your attention. They range from the average time to deal with household or planning applications. Notes that performance has been skewed by a small number of applications being determined over target, with page 42 providing details of the uptake of early learning and childcare with specific regard to 2-year-olds. Indicators for community and economy contain a expanded list ranging from information around tenancies, void rent loss and arrears. And members, as always, the indicators within well-being note the number of people who remain in hospital when assessed as fit to be more appropriately supported in other settings, known as delayed discharge, for over 2 weeks. It's incredible to note that this was maintained at 0 throughout all of last year and so far to date this year too. The overall performance in relation to delayed discharge remains strong relative to benchmark indicators at national with work around early referrals and improved ICT pathways, helping to facilitate discharges from hospitals into homes across East Ayrshire. Complaints are at page 48, provides information on the range of the complaints that have come in over this period. 34 in total were received, a slight increase from the same time last year. It provides details of our performance in terms of responding to complaints, and we can see that improved performance at stage 1 response slight dip in stage 2, and that again, members, as you can imagine, sometimes reflects the complexities in the multi-service elements of particular stage 2 complaints. The risks, those corporate risks, are set out on page 51. They've been reviewed and approved as always by the council management team at its meeting on the 23rd of August. Delighted to say at this point in time no new risks have been added, nor has the status of any risks been changed. They have, however, been updated with the most recent information and actions which colleagues across the council and CMT have taken to try and mitigate and manage those senior and significant corporate risks. That concludes the Q1 of the East Ayrshire Performance Report. The paragraph with the recommendations, Chair, are for Cabinet, noting at paragraph 3 on page 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any comments? Oh, Maureen, yeah.
Again, thank you very much. Linda, I think this is one for you in relation to education. In relation to the business briefing, if I add up the 290 plus the additional 115 applications that have been received, that takes me to 405, which is some places over the 395, which indicates that we can take that within the service. Now, that's how I am interpreting that. If there is another way of interpreting those numbers, it would be helpful to hear that. And also to ask, what would be the knock-on impact if we were not able to provide places for children that were technically eligible? And I do note that that's before we take on board the First Minister's statement of yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay, and again through you, Chair. Very good question, Councillor Mackay. Your interpretation is absolutely correct of the 290 and the 115 around about the part there. And basically what we highlight there, Councillor Mackay, is the high level of uptake that we receive in East Ayrshire. I believe it's possibly the highest in Scotland in terms of those eligible being mailed and then subsequently coming forward with an application. I think, to be honest, Councillor Mackay, I'd certainly like to come back with an update to that, because as you'll note in the business briefing, clearly there was an impact assessment of the number of extra applications that may have now been received outside of the scope of this particular version of East Ayrshire Performs and taken as potentially into the next period, Councillor Mackay. So I think if it's okay with yourself, I would remit to come back to you on a further position of how many other applications have actually been received. Councillor Mackay, we would always take the view that we would always try and accommodate those coming forward, be that on whatever models we can, but you can also see, Councillor Mackay, how that does have an impact in terms of our fiscal position, as already reported by Joe, in terms of the overspend in early years in totality, rather than this particular issue. So the aim would always be that where someone is eligible, we would be looking to take the young person in for the number of hours required. So, and we're still able to do that at this point in time. But in the light of the First Minister's announcement, Councillor Mackay, and the extension of aforementioned eligibility, I think at the moment it would be useful to note that we're planning for that particular eventuality. But I think that will also need to come with a potential discussion around about finance and budget for said expansion, Councillor Mackay. So I hope that's semi-helpful at this stage, but I would remit, if it's okay by you, Councillor Mackay, to potentially come back with an update in the next iteration of East Ayrshire Performs.
Thank you very much. And you.
Thanks, Maureen. Maybe make a wee comment myself here. The housing spokesperson's down in Wales, but nevertheless, there's some great, really good housing statistics here. In terms of the sustainability of tenancies, that's an incredible figure going up again, and percentage of lost rent due to vacancies went down yet again to an incredibly short figure. and even rent arrears, which is, when people are having extraordinary problems to paying arrears everywhere across the board seems to be getting up. They've managed to kind of bring them down with in-house, and that's incredible statistics there, and obviously repeat homelessness as well. So, and there's nobody for house here to hear me praise them up, so that's maybe I can pass that on to them as well. But that's an incredible wee batch of statistics there. Okay, members, we're next. We're at the complaints.
Yeah, we're at recommendation stage, Chair.
What page are we at?
Page 3, recommendations.
All right. So straight to recommendations now, I'm told. So can we agree recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. And the final item is Community Wealth Building Fund, and to take us through that is David.
Thanks. Good morning, Chair, and thanks colleagues and members. The paper provides an update on the Community Wealth Building Programme and outlines a proposal to change the criteria of the grant fund in terms of eligibility and to extend the Net Zero Accelerator Nation Programme. Paragraphs 3 through to 9 provides a background to the Regional Ayrshire Growth Deal Programme. You will all be aware that Community Wealth Building seeks to develop resilient and inclusive local economies by focusing on 6 key pillars, which are procurement, employment, land and assets, financial power, plural ownership and climate action. The business grant fund element of the programme equates to £333,000 over 3 years, which enables economic development through its Community Wealth Building business locality officers to provide grants to businesses within East Ayrshire. Currently, businesses are required to meet a minimum of a 50% contribution towards overall costs for the grant. The minimum grant available is £1,000 and the maximum offer is £5,000. Businesses are required to pay the total cost initially, and we as a council will reimburse the business upon proof of payment in line with the grant agreement. Paragraph 12 sets out the eligibility criteria which businesses need to meet to access the fund. And with all economic development grants, businesses are required to set out their application, the project impacts as a result of investment, to include details of turnover, jobs created, any expansion to new markets, improved productivity, improved efficiency, which needs to be quantified and capable of being monitored. In addition, a business growth advisor will then appraise the application prior to decision recommendation being made to ensure that proposals meet the Community Wealth Building criteria. Paragraph 15 provides a breakdown of funds and total spend to date. It highlights that we have currently an underspend of £163,000, which requires to be committed by the end of this financial year. You will see that from paragraph 15 that there are a number of reasons for this underspend, such as the challenges experienced in recruiting officers, necessary electronic processes that are required to be put in place to support the grant process, and obviously at the particular same time as we were progressing this, we had the pandemic, and obviously colleagues and business support were working to support businesses at that particular time. The current economic challenges that businesses are facing is also a major factor. Businesses' confidence is low, and advisors are highlighting that businesses are continuing to face real pressures resulting from the cost of living crisis. Business feedback suggests that they would like to invest in their business. However, the current match funding requirement is proving to be a barrier, as is the level of grant we're offering. Paragraphs 20 to 23 outline in further detail the challenges and the proposed changes to the grant fund. These include removing the match funding requirement and raising the maximum level of support from £5,000 to £25,000. In addition, members will be aware that the Economic Development Service launched the Net Zero Accelerator Programme as a pilot in partnership with Net Zero Nation and Scottish Enterprise. This programme is seen as a front runner for businesses transforming towards a net zero delivery, with 25 businesses currently working through the programme. Given its success, we are looking to undertake a second round to benefit a further 20 businesses utilising the Community Wealth Grant Fund. Paragraphs 30 to 40 outline implications, and you will note that the risk implications highlight that given the programme concludes at the end of March 2024, and while an Ayrshire Growth Deal extension is now being considered by North Ayrshire Council, this revision proposed will reduce the risk of the Council and ensure that the overall grant funding will be maximised within East Ayrshire, the East Ayrshire economy. The programme will be delivered in years 24-25 from funding allocated via the Shared Prosperity Fund to ensure there's a continuity. Chair, the recommendations are set out in paragraph 2 regarding the current support provided to local businesses, the eligibility criteria of the fund, and how we intend to utilise Community Wealth Building Grant Fund to create the second round of Net Zero Accelerator Nation programme. So I'm joined today with Mags Watson, Economic Development Strategic Manager, and we're happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
David. Members, any questions? Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a big fan of the community wealth building approach and the difference and the potential it's got to make in our local communities. Very encouraged to see the report that there's been 98 jobs created and a 25% increase in turnover by the participating businesses. That's really very impressive. So I'd be interested to know, are we going to do any longer term case studies and how the business support has helped our local businesses and what sort of local jobs that is created? And the final thing, maybe on the long-term sustainability of the programme. So how can we build and keep these learnings going from the work that's already been done? Sorry, I realised that was 3 questions rolled into one there.
Okay, thanks through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, with each applicant is required to state how their project will deliver additional jobs, and the 98 is a really positive mark, particularly given the current cost of living crisis. So these jobs equate to a whole range of different sectors, from engineering and manufacturing through to food and drink, and textiles, and through to the service industry. It is a capital grant, and these businesses are using the grant to buy additional key equipment. And there's one engineering company that we know that bought new manufacturing equipment for a lathe, and that's helped to create additional jobs that will be delivered. In terms of each of these projects obviously allow us to go back in and delve in and do a case study. So we are looking at providing case studies on this and actually raising the awareness of community wealth building, so that the kind of key case studies that have been highlighted up to now have been places like Muskiel. That's a good example where that's been in our community wealth building video, but we need to just drill down and do a number of these other case studies, and that work is ongoing presently. In terms of sustainability, the Ayrshire Growth Deal was providing a 3-year funding. The discussions just now are ongoing with North Ayrshire Council as the lead authority, and those discussions will possibly be taken back to Scottish and UK Government just to get clarity in any extension of that programme. Notwithstanding that, we've included and agreed at Cabinet that we'll have through the Shared Prosperity Fund, we've made an allowances for the grant funding and for the staffing. So it is our intention that through that programme of separate funding that we continue with community wealth building, so it becomes embedded in the work that we do.
Yeah, Lynn, yeah.
Just a wee follow-up one, Chair. Perhaps a suggestion. I think this would be good information for a councillor conversation in the future. And I'd also be interested to find out more, maybe do a deeper dive into what we're doing with our local community partners as the anchor organisations in that particular pillar of the community wealth building.
I mean, I think absolutely. And I mean, I was thinking, need to get this, get the message as a good thing, and we need to get it out to some of the businesses and business associations. But I don't know, Drew, new spokesperson.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to endorse this paper. Thanks, David. Really good paper. I think moving that 5,000 limit to 25,000 is going to be a big difference to all the businesses, basically. But a wee bit disappointed today. I thought we're actually getting another additional paper about the planning charter. I thought that was quite imminent to come through to us. I've got a lot of groups out there in the communities that are waiting to see the outcome of this paper. They're sitting in their projects and knew they want to get on with them basically again. So councils are the same, they're waiting for this paper. So hopefully we can maybe try and get it here. But what was concerning for me too was that I see the Cabinet on the 20th of September's stood down because there's no business. So that means we're getting into October and the groups are waiting as well again. So is there any delay in this paper for some reason?
Maybe David can help. I wasn't aware, but maybe more information I have.
Last April, the regulations changed, and there's two fronts that we can move on. One is planning authorities for the first time can introduce an additional increased fee for retrospective applications. Excuse me. And the other one is that planning authorities, if they choose to adopt a charter, can, amongst other things, introduce a reduction in fees for charitable bodies and social enterprises. The current interim head of planning is currently off ill. I do have a draft paper. I had indicated I hope to get it here for September come October. The Chief Exec is quite rightly trying to get back to best practice in terms of the process for these reports, not all reports, but those reports that merit consideration with the CMT, going through the CMT. And as he finished up on Friday, as Councillor Filson said, the Chief Exec directed that due to lack of business, the 20th of September one, which this wouldn't have reached, wasn't going ahead, and that no additional items would be taken for the 4th. I've therefore missed the boat for the 4th of October, but as I've advised Councillor Filson and other councillors that have raised it, this is a work in progress. But equally, we will bring it forward. I will bring it a name for the Cabinet after the next one after the 4th of October. But I just crave a bit of indulgence because I understand there's a big demand for this for groups out there. But we are trying to manage an awful lot greater priorities within the service than reducing our income. Now, I have made the commitment the report will come. I've now made it again in public. I missed the deadline that I didn't know of for the 4th of October, and I'll bring it to the Cabinet after that. And I am aware of interest, but I've also indicated this. It'll be up to Cabinet and Council whether you want to bring that in mid-year or whether you want to have that at a delayed start. So there's still an issue to be addressed about when these fees would take effect, whether it's mid-year or from the start of the next financial year. And therefore, there's still a question mark about when any groups would feel the immediate benefit of that. But that's within the gift of Council, and that will be set out in the paper to Cabinet. I had thought of taking it to the Planning Committee, but it's not really for the Planning Committee to set the fees. It's Cabinet sets the fees, or at least recommends to Council. So I will either bring it to Cabinet or I'll take direction whether it actually makes sense just to bring it direct to the Council at the end of October. But no later than the end of October, whether it's Cabinet or Council, I will bring this paper forward. And I ask members for a little bit more indulgence because we are under siege at the moment. We are under siege. And if we perhaps didn't have to spend as much time repeating, and I don't mean in this issue, but repeating responses on the same developments, the same inquiries to the same folk outside with the council, then we would be able to direct the resources and to better effect. But I don't like sitting here, and I've never made a point of sitting here making excuses. The bottom line is, as the report is in process, I will produce it and we'll either bring it to Cabinet, or if it speeds things up, we'll bring it to the council directly, because ultimately council approves all kind of budget matters. But one way or another, it will be dealt with by the end of October, absolute latest, and I appreciate members' continuing indulgence, but we are absolutely up against it just now, and I'm afraid there have been greater priorities than that report, but that report will come forward in October, and by the end of October we will have something in place and council can agree when they want that to take effect from. Thanks, Leader.
Thanks, David, I appreciate that.
Thanks, David. We'll do our best, and I appreciate some of the pressures are under. Okay, colleagues, with that, in terms of the report on page 57, recommendations, paragraph 2, can we agree recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks. Concludes the meeting of the Cabinet for today. Can I thank you all for your attendance?
Thank you. Bye.